Sung-jae Lee didn't fear bullets. He'd survived 3 assassination attempts. He'd negotiated billion-won deals with a knife to his ribs. He'd built Seoul's most ruthless criminal empire with nothing but violence and vision. But tonight, in his bulletproof penthouse fortress, the Black Wolf was on the floor, trembling. His newborn twins had been screaming for 11 hours straight, and the most dangerous man in Korea couldn't make them stop. 7 nannies quit. 10 doctors failed. Every specialist in Asia told him the babies were healthy. They weren't. They were dying from the inside out. And Sung-jae was helpless until his Jamaican maid did what all his power couldn't. She held both infants to her chest, hummed something ancient and achingly beautiful, and breastfed them back to peace. What Sung-jae didn't know, saving his sons would cost him everything. His empire, his control, his carefully guarded heart, and possibly his life. Hey, beautiful souls. Before we dive into this incredible story, I need your help. My mom told me I'd never reach 1,000 subscribers sharing stories like this. Stories about unconventional families, unlikely love, and breaking every rule. Let's prove her wrong together. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Now, let me tell you about the night the Black Wolf fell to his knees. The penthouse overlooking Seoul's Gangnam district had witnessed many sounds over the years. The sharp crack of gunfire during the Incheon territory purge. The screams of traitors dragged to the sublevels for interrogation. The thunderous explosion that marked the end of the Park Syndicate 2 years ago, when Sung-jae Lee consolidated his power and earned his title, the Black Wolf. But tonight, the penthouse echoed with a sound far more devastating. A baby's cry. No 2 babies' cries, harmonizing in a symphony of infant anguish that seemed designed to dismantle even the strongest mind. Sung-jae stood in the center of his fortress, a man who'd built an empire on calculated brutality and ice-cold precision, completely undone by 16 pounds of screaming humanity. His custom-tailored Brioni suit, midnight black with razor-sharp lines, was wrinkled beyond recognition. The top 3 buttons hung open, revealing the intricate tattoo work across his chest. A black wolf mid-strike, surrounded by crimson blossoms and Korean script that read, "Power demands sacrifice." His usually immaculate dark hair fell across his forehead in damp, exhausted strands. The shadows carved beneath his sharp cheekbones made him look less like a criminal kingpin and more like a man one breath away from complete collapse. Hyung-nim, perhaps we should call the pediatric specialist from Tokyo again? His head of security, Min-woo, suggested from the doorway, his usually steady voice tight with concern. Sung-jae didn't answer. He couldn't. His jaw was clenched so hard his molars ached as he paced the nursery with mechanical, desperate movements. In his right arm, Chang-min wailed with red-faced fury. In his left, Min-soo's cries reached a pitch that seemed to physically strike Sung-jae's chest. Twin boys, 3 weeks old, perfect in every medical sense, and absolutely, devastatingly inconsolable. The crying had been going on for 11 hours straight. 11 hours. Before tonight, there had been other nights, 2 days straight last week, 16 hours before that. The twins would cry until their tiny bodies trembled, until their voices went hoarse, until Sung-jae felt something inside himself crack a little deeper. He'd tried everything. 4 pediatricians, Korean, American, German, Japanese, 3 infant psychologists, 7 nannies, all quit within days. Imported formula from Switzerland. Donated breast milk from certified banks in 3 countries. Holistic healers. Sleep specialists. Custom-designed bassinets that cost more than luxury cars. White noise machines. Heartbeat simulators. Temperature-controlled rooms. Traditional Korean remedies. Modern Western solutions. Nothing. Worked. Hyung-nim, the council meeting is in 90 minutes. Min-woo pressed carefully. They're already questioning your... Get out. Sung-jae's voice cracked like a whip, raw and dangerous. Min-woo fled. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Sung-jae alone with his screaming sons and the crushing weight of his own helplessness. He stumbled to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city he controlled through strategic violence and calculated fear. His reflection stared back at him, a ghost of the man who'd eliminated 5 rival territories by age 28, who'd negotiated billion-won weapons deals without flinching, who'd personally ended the previous kingpin's reign with his bare hands. That man was gone, destroyed by 2 infants who wouldn't stop crying. "What do you want from me?" Sung-jae whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking. "I've given you everything. The best doctors, the most expensive care. Round-the-clock attention. What else is there?" Chang-min's only answer was another piercing wail that seemed to tear straight through Sung-jae's chest. The twins were 3 weeks old. Their mother, Haewon, daughter of a rival organization, had abandoned them the day after their birth. She'd left a note, 3 words in bleeding ink. "They're your curse." The marriage had been strategic, loveless, a consolidation of power between 2 warring factions. Neither had wanted children, but Changmin and Min-soo existed, and Sung-jae, despite everything he was, couldn't abandon his own blood. Even if that blood was currently screaming loud enough to shatter his legendary control. His phone buzzed against the marble table. A text from his underboss, Taeyang. "The Busan faction is moving. They smell weakness. You need to show your face. Now." Sung-jae looked at his phone, then at his screaming sons, then back at his phone. For the first time in his ruthless career, he felt something he'd never experienced before. Defeat. He was drowning, suffocating, the walls of his empire closing in, while these 2 tiny humans destroyed him from the inside out, with nothing but their cries. Then, a soft knock, so quiet he almost didn't hear it over the screaming. Sung-jae turned sharply, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun at his waist that wasn't there. He'd stopped carrying it in the nursery after nearly dropping Min-soo while reaching for it during a security alert. The door opened a crack. "Boss." It was a woman's voice, soft, accented, careful. Her. Shenika Forbes, the Jamaican maid. She'd been working in his penthouse for 3 weeks, cleaning, cooking, staying invisible as all good household staff did. Sung-jae barely registered her existence beyond signing her employment papers and approving her background check. But now she stood in his doorway, her warm brown eyes filled with something that looked dangerously close to compassion. She was tall, nearly 5'10", with deep brown skin that seemed to glow even in the nursery's dim lighting. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard household uniform, black slacks and a white button-down shirt. But there was nothing standard about the way she looked at his screaming sons. "I heard the babies," she said softly, her Jamaican accent making the words sound musical despite the chaos. May I try something?" Sung-jae's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to dismiss her, to handle this himself because accepting help meant acknowledging weakness, and weakness meant death in his world. But his sons were screaming, and he was so, tired. "Fine." Shaniqua stepped forward with quiet confidence, her movements unhurried despite the urgency. She approached him, and Sung-jae caught a scent he didn't recognize, something warm and spiced. Coconut? Vanilla? Something that didn't exist in his sterile, controlled world. She reached for Changmin first. "May I?" she asked, her hands already positioned to receive him. Sung-jae hesitated only a second before passing his son over. The moment Shaniqua lifted Changmin into her arms, something shifted. She cradled him against her chest, supporting his head with practiced ease, and began rocking with a gentle, rhythmic sway. She hummed something low and melodic, a song in a language Sung-jae didn't recognize, all smooth vowels and rolling consonants. Changmin's cries softened, not stopped, but changed, lessened in intensity, shifted to confused whimpers instead of furious wails. Sung-jae stared, his breath catching. But Min-soo, still in his arms, screamed louder, his tiny body shaking with effort. Shaniqua glanced at the second baby, then at Sung-jae, and something passed across her face, a decision being made in real time. "Boss," she said carefully, "I'm going to need you to trust me, and I'm going to need the rocking chair." Sung-jae moved on autopilot, passing her Min-soo, and watching as she settled into the plush nursing chair positioned near the window. She arranged both babies in her arms with a competence that spoke of experience. Then she reached for the soft blanket draped over the chair's arm and positioned it carefully across her chest and shoulder, creating a private tent of fabric. "What are you?" Sung-jae began. But Shaniqua was already moving, adjusting her clothing beneath the blanket with discreet, practiced motions. Then, Min-soo's cries stopped, completely, abruptly, as if someone had flipped a switch. Sung-jae's heart stuttered in his chest. Changmin, seeing his brother suddenly peaceful, began rooting instinctively, his cries turning to urgent, searching sounds. Shaniqua shifted slightly, adjusted the blanket, and within seconds, both babies were silent. The only sounds in the nursery were gentle sucking noises, and Shaniqua's continued humming that same achingly beautiful melody that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and sacred. Sung-jae stood frozen, completely, utterly, frozen. His sons, his screaming, inconsolable, impossible sons were quiet. Not just quiet, peaceful. He could see their tiny bodies relaxing, their fists unclenching, their faces transforming from anguished red to soft, satisfied pink. And Shaniqua? Shaniqua sat with her eyes closed, still humming, rocking gently, holding his sons against her chest as if she'd done this 1,000 times before. How? Sungjae's voice came out broken, barely above a whisper. How did you do that? Shaniqua opened her eyes, and they held no triumph, no pride, only gentle understanding. I didn't do anything extraordinary, boss, she said softly, her Jamaican accent wrapping around the words like warm silk. I just gave them what they were crying for, which is connection, warmth, real milk from a real person who cares whether they live or die. The words hit Sungjae like physical blows. But you, he gestured helplessly, you're not their mother. How can you? I nursed my nephew back home, Shaniqua explained quietly, her gaze dropping to the babies now feeding peacefully beneath the blanket. For 8 months after my sister got sick. Sometimes the body remembers. And sometimes, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes babies need more than formula and expensive equipment. They need a heartbeat, a human anchor. I hold them constantly, Sungjae said defensively. Do you? Shaniqua's eyes met his, challenging but not cruel. Or do you carry them while your mind is calculating territory disputes and power plays? Babies feel that distance, boss. They feel everything. Your stress, your fear, your... She hesitated, then finished gently. Your emotional absence. No one spoke to Sungjae this way. No one. His fingers curled into fists, his jaw tightening with that familiar rage that usually preceded violence. But he couldn't summon it. Not with his sons finally at peace in this woman's arms. Teach me, he heard himself say. Shanika blinked. Boss? Teach me. Sungjae moved closer, lowering himself to the floor beside the rocking chair, his expensive suit forgotten. Teach me how to do what you just did. How to make them feel. Whatever you made them feel. Shaniqua studied his face, this cold, dangerous man now stripped to his most vulnerable core, and something softened in her expression. I can try, she said. But boss, you can't learn to be present while still being the black wolf. You have to choose which man shows up for these babies. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Like a prophecy. Sungjae looked down at his sons Changmin and Minsu, feeding peacefully, their tiny hands resting against Shaniqua's chest as if they'd finally found home. And for the first time in his violent, controlled, carefully constructed life, Sungjae Lee made an irrational decision. Then teach me to be their father, he whispered. Whatever that costs, whatever that takes. Shaniqua was quiet for a long moment, looking down at the twins who were now drifting toward sleep, their tiny mouths still latched, their bodies completely relaxed. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight Sungjae recognized, the weight of survival. I don't know if I can do that, boss. Why not? Because teaching you to be a father means being in your world. And your world. She glanced toward the bulletproof windows, toward the city sprawling below. Your world kills people like me. I would never. You wouldn't have to. Shaniqua cut him off gently. Just being near you makes me a target. These babies make me a target. I came to Seoul to build something safe, quiet, invisible. What, you're asking? She shook her head. That's the opposite of survival. Sungjae felt something twist in his chest, something unfamiliar and uncomfortable. Fear, not of death. He'd made peace with mortality years ago. Fear of losing the only person who could save his sons. What do you want? He asked, his voice dropping to that dangerous register that usually preceded negotiation or violence. Shaniqua laughed softly, the sound almost sad. You can't buy what I want, boss. Try me. She was quiet, adjusting the blanket as the babies began releasing, their feeding complete, their tiny bodies slack with satisfaction and sleep. I want legal status, she finally said. My visa expires in 2 months. I've been fighting deportation for 8 months. I want to finish my nursing degree. I'm 3 semesters away. I want my daughter back home in Jamaica to join me safely. And I want, her voice dropped to almost a whisper, I want to stop being afraid every time I see police. Every time I hear sirens. Every time I'm asked for papers. Sungjae's mind, that calculating machine that had built an empire, immediately began mapping solutions. Done. Shaniqua's eyes snapped to his. Boss. Legal permanent residency within 2 weeks. Student visa upgraded to skilled worker status. Full tuition for your nursing degree. Any university you choose. Immigration paperwork for your daughter expedited and approved. And protection. His voice hardened. No police. No immigration enforcement. No one touches you. Ever. You can't just— I can. I will. Sungjae leaned forward, his voice intense. But I need you to help me with them. I need you to teach me how to be what they need. Because without you, Shaniqua— he looked at his sleeping sons, his voice cracking slightly. Without you, I don't know if they'll survive my incompetence. The raw honesty seemed to catch her off guard. She studied his face, this man who'd probably killed more people than he could count, now sitting on the floor of a nursery, begging for help. 1 month, she finally said. Trial period. You provide everything you promised, documented, legal, verified. You ensure my safety. You don't control my life outside these babies. And I help stabilize them. Done. I'm not finished. Her voice firmed. You don't touch me. You don't command me. You don't treat me like property or prey. I'm a professional, not a possession. These babies are your sons, not my obligation. If I stay, it's my choice. The moment it stops being my choice, I walk. Understood? Sungjae felt a smile ghost across his face, the first real one in weeks. Understood. And one more thing. Shaniqua's eyes held his steadily. You want to learn to be their father? Then you can't send them away when it gets hard. You can't hand them to staff when they cry. You stay. You learn. You fail and try again. Can you do that? Everyone in Sungjae's world said yes to him. Everyone obeyed without question. But this woman, this Jamaican maid who had nothing, who was fighting just to stay in the country, looked at the Black Wolf and demanded terms. And somehow, impossibly, Sungjae found himself respecting her for it. I can do that, he said quietly. Shaniqua looked down at the sleeping twins in her arms, then back at the Mafia king sitting at her feet, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that this moment would change everything. The enemies watching from the shadows, the empire that would turn against them, the love that would grow in the space between violence and vulnerability, and the family that no one saw coming. That night, the most dangerous man in Korea met the only person who could destroy or save him, and neither of them realized the war had already begun. The agreement was made at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, with 2 sleeping infants as witnesses and Seoul's skyline glittering through bulletproof glass. By dawn, Sungjae had already made 8 phone calls. His lawyer, his immigration contact, the registrar at Yonsei University's nursing program, the head of his document forgery division, for the legitimate paperwork that needed expediting, his underboss, his accountant, the director of international family services, and finally, his head of security, with very specific instructions about a woman who was now untouchable. By the time Shaniqua woke in the small staff bedroom adjacent to the nursery, her entire legal existence had been reconstructed. She found the manila folder on the kitchenette counter. Temporary work permit, upgraded visa application already submitted, university enrollment forms, and a bank card in her name with a balance that made her hands shake. The note attached, in sharp, precise handwriting. First month's salary plus education stipend. Legal paperwork in process. You start today. S.L. Shaniqua pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her heartbeat against her fingers. What have I gotten myself into? 3 months earlier. Kingston, Jamaica. Shaniqua had left Jamaica with 2 suitcases, her nursing school transcripts, and $800 sewn into the lining of her jacket. She'd also left behind her 7-year-old daughter, Amara, temporarily staying with her mother. The nursing program she'd been 2 semesters away from completing before the hospital she worked at closed. The dangerous man who'd decided she belonged to him, the one who didn't understand what no meant, who'd shown up at her home with gifts and threats in equal measure. The life she'd built, brick by careful brick, for 29 years. Korea had been random, desperate. A friend of a friend knew someone who could get her a tourist visa, and from there, she'd figure it out. Stay invisible, find under-the-table work, send money home. Finish her degree somehow, somewhere. Get Amara to safety. She'd cleaned homes, worked in restaurant kitchens, scrubbed office buildings at night, always cash, always invisible, always looking over her shoulder for immigration enforcement. The job at Sungjae's penthouse had been a gift from the universe. Live-in position, good pay, wealthy employer who traveled frequently and wouldn't ask questions. She'd taken it without hesitation. She'd had no idea she was walking into the home of Seoul's most dangerous criminal, or that his newborn sons would change everything. Present day, the penthouse nursery. You're doing it wrong. Sungjae froze, the bottle of formula suspended halfway to Chungmin's mouth. The baby was already fussing, turning his head away, small fists batting at the synthetic nipple. Shaniqua stepped closer, her movements calm and assured despite addressing a man who could have her killed with a phone call. The angle is too steep. He's getting air. Here. She gently adjusted Sungjae's arm, tilting the bottle differently. And you're tense. Your whole body is rigid. He feels that. I'm not tense, Sungjae said, his jaw tight enough to crack teeth. Mr. Lee, you're holding that baby like he's a grenade. Sungjae's eyes snapped to hers. Dangerous. Don't. Changmin wailed, arching away from the bottle. Shaniqua raised an eyebrow. Want to finish that sentence, or you want him to eat? For a long, tense moment, Sungjae stared at her. Then, incredibly, he exhaled and forced his shoulders down. Show me. Shaniqua took Changmin, settling him into the crook of her arm with practiced ease. She didn't use the bottle. Instead, she shifted her clothing discreetly and let the baby latch, her free hand supporting his head. Changmin's cries stopped instantly, replaced by contented feeding sounds. Sungjae watched, his expression unreadable. They won't take the bottle from me, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a realization he'd been avoiding for 3 days. Not yet, Shaniqua agreed. They don't trust it. They don't trust anyone but... She stopped herself. But you, Sungjae finished, his voice carrying an edge of something dangerous. Jealousy? Resentment? Fear? Shaniqua met his eyes steadily. They're babies, Mr. Lee. They go toward warmth and away from tension. Right now, you're all tension. I'm their father. Then be their father, she said, her Jamaican accent making the words sound both gentle and challenging. Not their boss. Not the black wolf. Their father. Power don't raise babies, Mr. Lee. People do. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. No one spoke to Sungjae like this. No one challenged him. No one dared suggest he was anything less than absolute in his competence. But this woman, this immigrant maid with no power, no protection, no backup, looked at him with calm, unflinching eyes and spoke truth like it was the simplest thing in the world. And somehow, impossibly, he didn't make her disappear for it. Day 5. Minwoo found Sungjae standing in the nursery doorway at 2 p.m., just watching. Inside, Shaniqua sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, both twins on a blanket before her. She was singing something in patois, the words unfamiliar but the melody soothing. Changmin tracked her movements with wide, alert eyes. Minsu had his tiny fist wrapped around her finger. Hyungnim, Minwoo said carefully. The Busan delegation is waiting. Reschedule. Sir, they've been waiting for 40 minutes. Then they can wait 40 more. Sungjae didn't take his eyes off the scene before him. Or they can leave. Minwoo shifted uncomfortably. The men are talking about her. Minwoo's voice dropped. They're saying she's a weakness, that you're distracted, that what? Sungjae's voice went cold and lethal. Choose your next words very carefully. Minwoo swallowed. That the babies have made you soft. Inside the nursery, Shaniqua lifted Minsu, pressing a kiss to his forehead before settling him against her shoulder. The baby's expression was pure contentment. Something twisted in Sungjae's chest, something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Tell the men, Sungjae said quietly, that anyone who questions my judgment can challenge me directly. We'll see how soft I am. Minwoo bowed and fled. Day 8. What is that? Shaniqua glanced up from the small bowl she was preparing. Gripe water, homemade. Sungjae moved closer, eyeing the mixture suspiciously. What's in it? Fennel, ginger, chamomile, dill, all natural. My grandmother's recipe. She tested the temperature on her wrist. Changmin's been fussy because of gas. This will help. You're giving my son street medicine? Shaniqua's hands stilled. When she looked at him, her eyes were harder than he'd ever seen them. No, Mr. Lee. I'm giving your son a remedy that's been used for generations because it works. But if you'd rather he cry for another 6 hours while we wait for your expensive specialists to suggest the same thing in a prettier bottle, by all means. She set the bowl down. He's your son. The challenge hung between them. Sungjae stared at her, then at Changmin, whose small face was scrunched with discomfort. Fine, he bit out. But if something goes wrong, it won't. How do you know? Because I've done this before. Because I was raised by women who knew how to heal without hospitals. Because sometimes, Mr. Lee, the old ways work better than money. She administered the remedy with gentle precision, then lifted Changmin and began massaging his belly in slow, circular motions while humming. Within 10 minutes, the baby burped, then relaxed completely. Sungjae watched the tension drain from his son's tiny body and felt something crack deeper in his carefully constructed walls. She knows things I don't. She can do things I can't. I need her. The realization was terrifying. Day 12. The night nanny, the 8th one, specially trained, Korean, impeccably credentialed, lasted 4 hours. Both twins screamed the moment Shaniqua left the nursery for her scheduled evening off. They screamed through feeding attempts, through diaper changes, through rocking, singing, and every technique the specialist employed. At 11 p.m., Sungjae called Shaniqua's phone. She answered on the 3rd ring, breathless. She'd been at the university library, studying. "Come back," he said. No preamble, no pleas, just raw need. Shaniqua was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Lee, they won't stop. They haven't stopped since you left." His voice cracked slightly. "Please." 20 minutes later, Shaniqua walked into the nursery in jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked different, softer, more herself. She lifted both babies without a word, settled into the rocking chair, and within minutes, both twins were quiet, feeding, peaceful. Sungjae stood in the doorway, still in his suit from the emergency council meeting he'd left early, and watched this woman single-handedly restore order to his chaotic world. The night nanny had already collected her things and left, quiet and defeated. "They only want you," Sungjae said, his voice barely above a whisper. Shaniqua looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "For now." "No." He moved closer, his movements carrying that predatory grace that marked him as dangerous. "Always. They refuse everyone else. They refuse me." The admission cost him. "Without you, they're suffering. Without you, I'm—" He stopped himself. "Failing, drowning, lost." "You're what, Mr. Lee?" Shaniqua asked softly. Sungjae looked at his sons, peaceful in her arms, then at her face, this woman who'd become essential in less than 2 weeks. "Nothing," he said finally. "Without you, I'm nothing." The confession hung in the air, terrifying in its honesty. Shaniqua held his gaze, and something shifted between them, something that had nothing to do with babies or agreements or legal paperwork. Something dangerous. "Then I guess you better make sure I stay safe, Mr. Lee," she whispered, "because your sons aren't the only ones depending on me anymore." Outside, Seoul glittered with 1,000 threats neither of them could see coming, and somewhere in the shadows, enemies were already taking notes. It happened on day 16, at 3 in the morning, when exhaustion stripped away pretense and left only truth. Shaniqua had just finished feeding the twins and was settling them back into their bassinets when she noticed a photograph, face down on the marble dresser, partially hidden beneath a stack of unused burp cloths. She shouldn't have touched it, but something about the deliberate way it was hidden, the violence in how it had been placed face down, made her fingers move before her mind could stop them. The woman in the photograph was breathtaking. Delicate Korean features, porcelain skin, wearing a traditional white hanbok embroidered with gold thread, wedding attire. She stood beside Sungjae, who looked exactly as cold and unreachable as he did now, maybe more so. There was no joy in the image, no love, just 2 beautiful people posed like chess pieces. "You shouldn't have done that." Shaniqua spun around. Sungjae stood in the doorway, still dressed despite the hour, his tie loosened and his hair disheveled. His eyes were fixed on the photograph in her hands with an expression that looked dangerously close to rage. "I'm sorry. Put it down." She set it carefully on the dresser, face down again, exactly as she'd found it. The silence stretched, taut and dangerous. "Their mother," Shaniqua said quietly. It wasn't a question. Sungjae's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Where is she?" "Gone." The single word carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken stories. Shaniqua glanced at the sleeping twins, then back at Sungjae. "Gone how? Passed away? Divorced? Traveling?" "Gone," Sungjae repeated, his voice dropping to that lethal register that usually preceded violence. "As in fled the country 6 hours after giving birth. As in left a note with 3 words and disappeared into the night. As in chose freedom over her own children." The confession seemed torn from somewhere deep, somewhere he'd buried it under layers of control and pride. Shaniqua felt her chest tighten. "Mr. Lee." "Her name was Haewon," he continued, his voice flat and mechanical, as if reciting a business report. "Daughter of the Daegu syndicate leader. The marriage was strategic, a consolidation of territories after years of bloodshed. She wanted her father's empire. I wanted the Daegu distribution routes. Neither of us wanted." He gestured toward the bassinets. But they happened anyway. They happened anyway." Sungjae moved to the window, his back to her. She hated every moment of the pregnancy. Hated me for causing it. When the twins came early, emergency cesarean, high-risk delivery, His voice cracked slightly. The first words she said when she woke up were, "Get them away from me." Shaniqua's hand pressed against her chest. She stayed long enough to be medically cleared. Then she left. Her father extracted her to Singapore, then Europe. She sent divorce papers and a note that said, He stopped, his shoulders rigid. Said what? "They're your curse. May they destroy you as you destroyed me." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward with devastating force. Shaniqua looked at the sleeping babies Changmin and Minsu, perfect and tiny and innocent, and felt tears burn behind her eyes. "They were crying for her," she whispered. Sungjae turned sharply. "What? All that crying? All those hours of screaming? They were crying for their mother." Shaniqua moved closer to the bassinets, her voice soft but certain. "Babies know, Mr. Lee. They know when they've been rejected. They feel abandonment in their bodies. It's trauma. They're 3 weeks old. They can't possibly." "They were inside her for 8 months," Shaniqua interrupted gently. "They knew her heartbeat, her voice, her presence. And then suddenly, she was gone. Completely gone. No smell, no sound, no comfort. Just emptiness. That's what they've been crying about. Not gas, not hunger. Grief." Sungjae stared at her, something raw and broken crossing his face. "So all this time," he said hoarsely, "they've been mourning someone who doesn't want them. Someone who sees them as a curse." "No." Shaniqua's voice was firm. "They've been searching for a mother. Any mother. They don't care about blood or biology. They care about who shows up, who holds them, who makes them feel safe." She paused, meeting his eyes. "That's why they calmed with me. Not because I'm special. Because I showed up." The statement hung between them, heavy with meaning. Sungjae was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving from Shaniqua to the twins and back again. "You don't fear me," he said suddenly. Shaniqua blinked. "Sir? Everyone fears me. My men, my enemies, the women I've been with. Even," he laughed bitterly, "even my wife feared me. But you." He moved closer, studying her face with dangerous intensity. "You tell me I'm wrong. You challenge my decisions. You speak to me like I'm just a man who doesn't know how to hold his own children. Why?" Shaniqua held his gaze steadily. "Because that's exactly what you are. I'm the Black Wolf. I've killed." "I don't care who you are out there," Shaniqua said quietly, gesturing toward the windows and the city beyond. "In here, with them, you're just a father who's trying. That's all you are. That's all you need to be." Something cracked in Sungjae's expression, something he immediately tried to wall off, but not before Shaniqua saw it. Vulnerability, raw and terrifying. He turned away sharply, his hands curling into fists. "You should go," he said, his voice rough. "Get some sleep. I'll watch them. Mr. Lee, go." It wasn't anger. It was self-preservation. A man who'd felt too much, revealed too much, and needed to rebuild his walls before they collapsed entirely. Shaniqua hesitated, then nodded and left quietly. But as she closed the door, she heard it a sound so soft she almost missed it. Sungjae, standing over his son's bassinets, whispering words in Korean she didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakable. An apology, a promise, a prayer. The next morning, the kitchen. Minwoo and 2 other lieutenants stopped talking the moment Shaniqua entered. The silence was pointed, uncomfortable. Shaniqua moved to the coffee maker, keeping her movements calm and unhurried despite the weight of their stares. "The boss didn't come to the morning briefing," one of them finally said in Korean. He didn't realize Shaniqua had been learning the language in secret, picking up phrases during her months in Seoul. "He's with the babies," Minwoo replied carefully. "He's with her," another corrected. "He's different. Distracted. Weak. Watch your mouth," Minwoo warned. "It's true. 3 council meetings rescheduled, 2 territory disputes ignored. The Busan faction is already testing boundaries, all because of some foreign woman who what?" Sungjae's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. All 3 men froze. He stood in the doorway, hair damp from a shower, wearing a fresh suit, but his eyes were absolutely lethal. "Who what?" he repeated, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper. "Finish your sentence." The man who'd been speaking went pale. "Hyung Nim, I only meant, you meant that my priorities are wrong, that I've become weak, that the woman caring for my sons is a liability." Sungjae moved closer, each step measured and predatory. "Is that what you meant?" "No, sir, Then what did you mean?" Silence. Sungjae's eyes swept across all 3 men, cold and assessing. "Let me be extraordinarily clear. That woman is the only reason my sons are alive. She is under my protection. Anyone who disrespects her, questions her, or even looks at her wrong answers to me. Directly. Personally. Understood? Yes, Hyung Nim, they chorused. Get out. They fled. Only Minwoo remained. And Shaniqua, who'd been standing frozen by the coffee maker. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Sung-jae finally looked at her, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Yes, I did. They're going to resent me. They're going to fear you, he corrected. Because they fear me, and you. He paused, something shifting in his eyes. You're under my protection now. Which means you're untouchable. The weight of those words settled over Shaniqua like a cloak, protective and suffocating all at once. She was safe, but she was also marked. And in Sung-jae's world, being marked was its own kind of danger. Week 3, 2:34 a.m. Sung-jae woke to silence. After weeks of screaming, of constant crisis, of babies who wouldn't stop crying, the silence was wrong. Alarming. He moved through the penthouse like a shadow, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun he kept in the hallway table drawer. Training in paranoia made him check every corner, every shadow, before approaching the nursery. The door was cracked open, soft light spilling through. What he found stopped him completely. Shaniqua was asleep in the rocking chair, her head tilted back, lips slightly parted. Both twins were sprawled across her chest, skin to skin, their tiny bodies rising and falling with her breathing. Chang-min had his cheek pressed against her collarbone. Min-soo's small fist was curled in the fabric of her shirt. They looked like a painting, like something sacred and untouchable. Sung-jae stood in the doorway, unable to move, unable to breathe, feeling something dark and dangerous unfurl in his chest. Jealousy. He was jealous of his own sons. Jealous of how easily they claimed her warmth, how naturally they rested against her, how completely she gave herself to them without hesitation, without fear, without walls. When was the last time someone had held him like that? Offered comfort without agenda? Touched him with gentleness instead of calculation or terror? Never. The answer was never. Sung-jae's hands curled into fists at his sides as he watched this woman, this stranger who'd become essential in 3 weeks, give his children everything he'd never had. I want that, his mind whispered traitorously. I want her to look at me the way she looks at them. I want to be held like I matter, like I'm not a monster. The thought was so pathetic, so weak, that he nearly turned and left. But Chang-min stirred, making a small sound, and Shaniqua's hand moved automatically to his back, patting gently even in sleep. The baby settled immediately, burrowing closer. Something cracked in Sung-jae's chest. He moved quietly into the room and draped a blanket across Shaniqua's shoulders, careful not to wake her. She didn't stir, but as he turned to leave, her sleep-rough voice stopped him. Mr. Lee? He froze. Sleep. I was just checking on them. Shaniqua's eyes opened slowly, unfocused and warm. They're good. Finally sleeping through longer stretches. Because of you. She smiled sleepily. Because they feel safe. That's all they ever wanted. That's all anyone wants, Sung-jae thought but didn't say. Instead, he nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. But the image stayed with him, burned into his mind like a brand. Mother and sons, peaceful and whole. And him, standing outside in the cold, looking in. Week 4. The transformation was undeniable. Chang-min and Min-soo had gained weight, their faces filling out from gaunt to cherubic. Their cries, when they came, were normal baby sounds, hungry, tired, uncomfortable, not the soul-destroying screams of before. They smiled now. Actual smiles that made Sung-jae's chest hurt in unfamiliar ways, and they were learning to trust him, slowly, painfully, but learning. Support his head, yes, like that. Shaniqua instructed as Sung-jae held Min-soo during a diaper change. Now talk to him. Babies learn voices. What do I say? Anything. Tell him about your day. Sing. Count. Just let him hear you being present. Sung-jae looked down at his son, who stared back with wide, curious eyes. Your mother hated you, he found himself saying quietly. She hated me. She hated this life. But I don't, his voice caught. I don't hate you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying. I need you to know, I'm trying. When he looked up, Shaniqua was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. That's perfect, she said softly. That's exactly what he needed to hear. Bath time was a disaster. Sung-jae, who'd orchestrated complex criminal operations across 3 countries, couldn't manage to bathe a 4-week-old without nearly dropping him. He's slippery. He's a baby covered in soap, Mr. Lee. Of course he's slippery. Shaniqua guided his hands, showing him how to support Chengmin's head while washing his tiny body. Gentle. Like this? You're not interrogating him. I know how to be gentle. She raised an eyebrow, and despite himself, Sungjae almost smiled. Apparently not with babies, he muttered. By the end, Chengmin was clean, Sungjae was soaked, and Shaniqua was laughing a sound so genuine and unguarded it made something in his chest tighten. You did good, she said, wrapping the baby in a soft towel. I'm covered in water. That means you were paying attention to him instead of yourself. That's what good fathers do. The word father still felt foreign in her mouth, but hearing it from her made it feel almost possible. Week 5. Hyungnim, we need to talk. Taeyang, Sungjae's underboss for 7 years, stood in the office with the posture of a man delivering bad news. Sungjae didn't look up from the reports. Talk. It's about the woman. Now Sungjae looked up, his expression going cold. Choose your next words carefully. Taeyang held his ground, one of the few men who could. The organization is talking. You've missed 5 council meetings, ignored 3 territorial disputes. The Incheon route situation should have been handled weeks ago. And all of it, every delay, every absence is because of her. Because of my sons, Sungjae corrected, his voice lethal. Because you can't leave her side for more than a few hours without calling to check in. Because you reorganized your entire security protocol around protecting a maid. Because, Taeyang leaned forward, because you're becoming dependent on her, and that's making you vulnerable. Sungjae stood slowly, violence coiled in every muscle. Vulnerable. Yes. Because I'm ensuring my children survive? Because everyone can see what she means to you. Taeyang's voice dropped. And in our world, what you love is what kills you. The words landed like bullets. Sungjae's hands flattened on the desk. She's under my protection. I know. That's the problem. Protection implies value. Value implies weakness. Weakness invites attack. Taeyang straightened. The rivals are already watching her. Busan has eyes on the building. Daegu, your ex-wife's family, they're asking questions. And the Incheon syndicate has started referring to her as the wolf's leash. Something dark and violent moved across Sungjae's face. If they touch her, they won't touch her. They'll take her, along with the twins. And then they'll negotiate. Taeyang met his eyes steadily. That's how you do it. That's how they'll do it. Silence stretched, thick and dangerous. What do you suggest? Sungjae asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Send her away, pay her off, hire 10 nannies to replace her. Get back to being the Black Wolf instead of... He gestured vaguely. Whatever this is. No. Hyungnim. No. Sungjae's voice cut like glass. She stays. The twins need her. I need... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. She stays. Increase security. Double the perimeter. Put surveillance on anyone who even looks at this building. But she stays. Taeyang studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. As you say, Hyungnim. But as he left, he muttered something under his breath that Sungjae caught anyway. She's already changed you, and you can't even see it. Incheon, rival syndicate war room. The photograph landed on the table. Shaniqua walking through the building's underground parking garage with both twins in a stroller, 2 bodyguards flanking her. Who is she? The Incheon boss asked. Shaniqua Forbes, Jamaican national, overstayed visa, working as his maid. The intelligence officer pointed to another photo. The babies won't let anyone else near them. Not nannies, not staff, just her. And the wolf? Obsessed. Cancelled meetings. Reorganized his entire schedule around her availability. When she leaves the penthouse, he calls within an hour. The boss leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. So the monster finally found something he can't protect. What are your orders? Watch her. Document everything. Learn her patterns. And when the time is right, he tapped the photograph. We take the Jamaican woman and the twins. The Black Wolf will tear himself apart trying to get them back. And if he doesn't, then we kill them all and watch his empire crumble. The room filled with dark, satisfied laughter. None of them noticed the small recording device hidden in the ceiling vent, one of Sungjae's many insurance policies. But by the time the recording reached him, the trap was already set, and Shaniqua, humming Jamaican lullabies to 2 sleeping babies, had no idea she'd become the most valuable target in Seoul's underworld. Y'all, if you're feeling the tension between Sungjae and Shaniqua right now, drop a heart in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This story gets more intense from here, and you need to be on this journey with us. Hit that button and let's keep going. Week 6. Early morning. The penthouse had begun to smell different. Where once there had been only sterile air and expensive cologne, now there were layers. Coconut oil, ginger root steeping in hot water, chamomile and lavender from the steam humidifier Shaniqua had insisted on, and something else, something warm and indefinable that Sungjae had started associating with safety. With her, he stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Shaniqua prepare what she called belly rub oil, a mixture of warm water, a touch of honey, and herbs she'd bought from the Jamaican shop in Itaewon. "This won't cure colic," she explained, testing the temperature on her wrist, "but it soothes their digestive system, helps them relax." She glanced up, catching him watching. "My grandmother used this on every baby in our village. Never failed." "Your grandmother was a healer?" "She was a woman who paid attention." Shaniqua smiled, the expression transforming her face. "That's all healing is sometimes, paying attention to what's needed." Sungjae moved closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. "Show me." In the nursery, Shaniqua warmed her hands, then gently massaged Minsu's tiny belly in slow, clockwise circles. She hummed while she worked that same melody she always hummed, something ancient and rhythmic that seemed to come from her bones. The baby's eyes fluttered closed, his small body going slack with contentment. "Now you," Shaniqua said, guiding Sungjae's hands to Changmin. His hands that had broken bones, pulled triggers, dealt death trembled as they touched his son's impossibly soft skin. Gentle pressure, clockwise, always clockwise, and hum something. Your voice matters more than the melody. "I don't know any lullabies." "Then hum anything. A song from your childhood. Something that made you feel safe." Sungjae's hands stilled. "Nothing made me feel safe." Shaniqua's eyes found his, soft with understanding. "Then hum something that makes them feel safe." "You create what you never had, Mr. Lee." "That's what parents do." So Sungjae hummed awkward and off-key, some half-remembered tune from a drama his mother watched before she died, and watched his son relax under his touch. For the first time in 6 weeks, he felt like a father instead of a failure. The same week, afternoon. The steam ritual happened during Changmin's congestion. Shaniqua filled the bathroom with steam from the shower, added eucalyptus oil to a bowl of hot water, and sat on the closed toilet seat with the baby against her chest, letting him breathe the humid, medicated air. "In Jamaica, we call this bush medicine," she explained when Sungjae appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the fog. "Natural remedies, no chemicals, just plants and patience. And it works? Listen." Changmin's breathing had already eased, his small chest rising and falling more smoothly. Sungjae sat on the edge of the bathtub, watching mother and child through the steam like they were a mirage. "Not mother," his mind corrected. "She's not their mother." But his heart wasn't listening anymore. Week 7, evening. "You missed breakfast. And lunch." Sungjae looked up from his desk to find Shaniqua standing in his office doorway, holding a plate of food and wearing an expression he'd seen her use on the twins when they were being difficult. "I was busy." "You were hiding." She set the plate down with more force than necessary. "I can hear your stomach growling from the nursery, Mr. Lee. Eat." "You don't give me orders. Someone has to." She crossed her arms. "Those babies need you healthy. I need you healthy. You can't take care of anyone if you're running on nothing but coffee and stubbornness." Sungjae stared at her, this woman who'd been in his home for 7 weeks and somehow thought she could boss him around. The dangerous thing was, he liked it. Liked being seen, being cared for, being treated like someone whose well-being mattered beyond strategic value. "Thank you," he said quietly. Shaniqua blinked, surprised. Then her expression softened. "You're welcome. Now eat before it gets cold." She turned to leave, but Sungjae's voice stopped her. "Stay." "Sir?" "Stay. Have dinner with me. You haven't eaten either." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite an order either. Shaniqua hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from him. They ate in comfortable silence, the sound of the city humming beyond the windows, and Sungjae realized this was the most peaceful meal he'd had in years, maybe ever. Week 8, late night. It happened without planning. Shaniqua had just finished the twins' midnight feeding and was carrying Minsu to his bassinet when exhaustion finally caught up with her. She stumbled slightly, and Sungjae, who'd been working at the nursery desk, unable to stay away, caught her elbow. "Careful." "I'm fine, just tired." "Sit." He guided her to the couch, taking Minsu and settling him in the bassinet himself. When he turned back, Shaniqua had curled into the corner of the couch, her eyes already drifting closed. "You should go to your room," he said. In a minute." But her minute became 5, then 10, and Sungjae found himself sitting beside her, close enough that when her head tipped sideways in sleep, it landed on his shoulder. He froze. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to maintain distance, to protect himself from this vulnerability. But Shaniqua made a small, contented sound in her sleep and burrowed closer, and Sungjae found he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except feel the warmth of her against his side. She smelled like coconut oil and baby lotion, and something uniquely her, something that made his chest ache with an emotion he refused to name. This is dangerous, his mind warned. This is weakness. This will get you killed. But his body betrayed him. His arm moving almost of its own accord to wrap around her shoulders, keeping her steady, keeping her close. Just this once, he told himself. Just for tonight. He'd rebuild his walls tomorrow. He wouldn't. But he didn't know that yet. Incheon, Rival Syndicate headquarters. The pattern is confirmed. The intelligence officer spread photographs across the table. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 3 p.m., she goes to the university for her nursing classes. 2 bodyguards. Same route. Same parking structure. Security? Tight around the penthouse. Moderate during transport. Lightest at the university civilian space. Lots of witnesses. They're trying not to draw attention. The Incheon boss studied the photos. Shaniqua, walking across campus, textbooks in her arms, smiling at something one of her bodyguards said. Young, beautiful, completely unaware she was being hunted. The babies. Usually with her. But last week they stayed at the penthouse with the wolf. If we time it right, we can take her alone. No. The boss's eyes gleamed. We take all 3. The woman and the babies. Maximum leverage. That requires hitting the penthouse. His security there is designed to keep armies out, not to stop someone who's already inside. He slid another photo forward. Find me someone on his staff. Someone with gambling debts, sick family, or a grudge. Everyone has a price. And if we can't find anyone, then we create a reason for her to leave the building with the babies. A family emergency, a legal issue, a threat to someone she cares about. He leaned back. The Black Wolf has spent years making himself untouchable, but now he has something he can't protect. We just need to wait for the right moment to strike. When? Soon. Before he realizes how exposed she really is. The meeting adjourned, and plans set into motion. Plans that would shatter the fragile peace Sungjae had built. Plans that would test whether love made him stronger or weaker. Plans that would prove whether the Black Wolf could protect what mattered most. The penthouse. Same night. Sungjae sat with Shaniqua sleeping on his shoulder. The twins breathing softly in their bassinets. Soul glittering beyond the windows like a field of broken stars. He felt it then, that shift in the air that came before violence. That instinct honed by years of survival. Something was coming. His free hand moved to his phone, pulling up the security feeds, the intelligence reports, the whispers his network had caught. And there it was. Coded messages, unusual movement, too many eyes watching his building. They were planning something. His arm tightened around Shaniqua unconsciously. They can try, he thought, his eyes going cold and lethal. But they'll have to go through me first, and I've never lost what I've claimed as mine. The war was coming. He just didn't know it had already begun. Week 9, 2:47 a.m. The penthouse was quiet except for the soft sounds of feeding. Shaniqua sat in the nursery rocking chair, both twins latched and peaceful, the city lights casting gentle shadows across the walls. She hummed her grandmother's lullaby, the one about rivers and homecoming, and felt that particular exhaustion that came with contentment. Minsu's tiny hand rested against her chest. Changmin's eyes were already drifting closed. This was the safest she'd felt since arriving in Korea, protected, purposeful, needed. Then the lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed. Cut. Complete darkness swallowed the penthouse in an instant. Shaniqua's breath caught, her arms instinctively tightening around the babies. The emergency generators should have kicked in immediately. Sungjae had explained the backup systems, the redundancies, the layers of security that made this building a fortress. But there was only darkness. And then, glass shattering, multiple points, lower floors, shouting in Korean. Gunfire. Oh God. Shaniqua's heart slammed against her ribs. The twins, sensing her fear, began to fuss. Shh, shh, babies please, she whispered frantically, standing and rocking them even as panic clawed at her throat. The nursery door flew open. Shaniqua nearly screamed before recognizing Sungjae's silhouette. He moved like violence incarnate, a gun already in his hand. Panic room. Now. His voice was cold, controlled, lethal. Don't open the door for anyone but me. You understand? Anyone but me. What's happening? Go. He was already moving past her, toward the sounds of invasion, and Shaniqua ran. The panic room was hidden behind the nursery closet, a seamless door that only opened with a handprint scanner. Sungjae had shown her once, insisted she memorize the location, and she'd thought it was paranoia. Now she blessed every second of his caution. Her hand slammed against the scanner. The door clicked open with agonizing slowness. She stumbled inside the small, reinforced space, maybe 8 feet by 10, lined with supplies, weapons, communication equipment. There was a crib, a changing station, emergency supplies. This room was built for exactly this scenario. Shaniqua laid the twins in the crib, then shoved a heavy storage unit against the door for extra measure. Her hands shook violently as she worked. Outside, the sounds of violence grew closer. Footsteps, multiple sets, heavy boots. Check every room. Find the woman and the babies. The wolves downstairs moved before he. A scream, cut short, wet, gurgling sounds. Shaniqua pressed her fist against her mouth to keep from making noise. The twins, sensing everything wrong, began to cry. No, no, please babies, please be quiet, Shaniqua whispered desperately, lifting them both, pressing them against her chest. She cupped her hands over their heads, humming frantically, tears streaming down her face. Please be quiet. Please, please, please. Chang Min's cries muffled against her skin. Minsu's fussing softened, but not enough. Did you hear that? Footsteps stopped outside the nursery. Sounded like crying. Babies. Check the closet. Shaniqua stopped breathing. The closet door opened. Hangers scraped. Boxes shifted. There's nothing, wait. This wall. It's reinforced. No. Panic room. She's in the fucking panic room. Something heavy slammed against the door. The entire room shuddered. Shaniqua backed into the corner, cradling the twins. Her body curved around them protectively. If they broke through, they'd have to go through her first. The door's 6 inches of reinforced steel. One voice said, "We'd need cutting equipment." Then get it. The boss wants those babies and the woman. We don't come back without. The voice ended in a wet, choking sound. Then, silence. Heavy, terrible, waiting. Shaniqua held her breath, held the babies, held herself together by pure will. A single set of footsteps approached the closet. Slow, deliberate. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 careful taps against the panic room door. Shaniqua. Sungjae's voice rough and strained. It's me. Open the door. She couldn't move, couldn't process. Her body locked in terror. Shaniqua, I need you to open the door. Now. They're dead. All of them. You're safe. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped Minsu as she stood. She shoved the storage unit aside with strength born of adrenaline and pressed her palm to the interior scanner. The door opened. Sungjae stood in the closet doorway, and Shaniqua's breath stopped. He was covered in blood. His white shirt was ruined, his face splattered, his hands gauze. His hands looked like he'd reached into hell itself, but his eyes, when they found hers, were utterly human, desperate, relieved, broken. Are they hurt? His voice cracked on the question. Are you hurt? No, we're okay, Shaniqua's legs gave out. Sungjae caught her, caught all 3 of them, wrapping his arms around her and the twins with shocking gentleness despite the violence still dripping from his hands. She collapsed against his chest, sobbing. The twins pressed between them and felt his whole body shaking. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair, his voice raw. I'm so fucking sorry. They shouldn't have gotten this close. They shouldn't have. We're okay. Shaniqua managed through tears. We're okay. You got here. If I'd been 1 minute later. His arms tightened, almost painful. If they'd gotten through that door. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Shaniqua pulled back just enough to see his face. Blood and anguish, and something else, something fierce and possessive, and terrifying. Who were they? Incheon Syndicate. 8 men. They're dead. His voice was flat, final. All of them. Are more coming? No. His jaw tightened. Not tonight. Not ever. I'm ending this. The twins, pressed between them, had gone quiet whether from exhaustion or the strange safety of being held by both their protectors. Shaniqua didn't know. Sungjae looked down at them, then back at Shaniqua, and something in his expression cracked completely. I can't do this, he whispered. Can't do what? Can't pretend you're just the nanny. Can't pretend you're not. He stopped, his throat working. They came for you, for my sons, for everything that matters. And I realized, standing down there, killing my way back to this room, his eyes met hers, raw and honest and absolutely devastating. I can't lose you. Either of you. All of you. Shaniqua's breath caught. Mr. Lee. Sung Jae. His bloodied hand came up to cup her face with impossible gentleness. My name is Sung Jae. And you need to understand something, Shaniqua. You need to understand what you've become. What have I become? His thumb traced her cheekbone, smearing blood she'd later wash away but would never forget. Mine, he said simply. Absolutely. No one touches what's mine. Not my son's. Not. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Not you. The declaration hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. Outside, sirens wailed. His security team was doing cleanup. Police were being redirected. The machine of his empire was already erasing evidence, spinning stories, protecting their boss. But inside this blood-soaked nursery closet, holding a woman and 2 babies, Sung Jae Lee, the Black Wolf, Seoul's most feared criminal, felt something he'd never felt before. Complete. And it terrified him more than any army ever could. I'm moving you, he said, his voice hardening with decision. All of you. Somewhere safer. Somewhere they can't reach. Sung Jae. The use of his name felt strange on her tongue. Intimate. Dangerous. This is not negotiable. His eyes were steel. They declared war the moment they crossed my threshold. And I'm going to burn their entire organization to ash. But first I'm making sure you're untouchable. Shaniqua looked at this man who'd just killed 8 people to reach her, whose hands were gentle despite the blood, whose eyes held promises that felt like chains and salvation all at once. She should run. She should take her visa paperwork and disappear into the night. But the twins were sleeping against her chest, and Sung Jae's arms were still wrapped around all of them, and somewhere between the panic and the violence and the relief, she'd made a choice without realizing it. She was staying. God help her. She was staying. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Sung Jae closed his eyes, relief breaking across his face like dawn. Then he kissed her forehead, brief, chaste, but burning with intention, and pulled away. Pack what you need. We leave in an hour. He disappeared into the blood-soaked darkness beyond, already making calls, already mobilizing his empire, already declaring war. And Shaniqua stood in the ruins of their peaceful night, holding 2 sleeping babies, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Everything. Her heart whispered. You just agreed to everything. Private safe house. Rooftop. 4:32 a.m. The new location was a high-rise in Gangnam, owned through shell corporations, unknown to anyone outside Sung Jae's innermost circle. 30 floors up, bulletproof glass, security that would make government buildings jealous. But Sung Jae had brought them to the rooftop. Shaniqua stood at the edge of the garden terrace, the twins finally asleep in a portable bassinet beside her, wrapped in blankets against the cool pre-dawn air. Seoul stretched below them, a sea of light slowly dimming as morning approached, the city exhaling after holding its breath through the violence. She was still shaking, couldn't stop. Adrenaline had her in its grip, replaying those moments in the panic room over and over. The footsteps, the threats, the terrible certainty that they were going to break through. Here. Sung Jae appeared beside her, draping his jacket over her shoulders. He'd showered, changed into clean clothes, but his knuckles were still raw and split from the fight. You should be sleeping, he said quietly. Can't. Her voice came out rough. Every time I close my eyes, I hear them, outside the door, trying to get to the babies. They're dead, Shaniqua. All of them, and the ones who sent them. His voice went cold. They'll be dead by noon. She turned to look at him. How do you do it? Do what? Kill. And then just stand here. Calm. Like you didn't just take 8 lives. Sung Jae was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the city below. Because they came for my children. They came for you. I'd kill 800 if that's what it took. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. This is my life now, isn't it? Shaniqua whispered. Running, hiding, waiting for the next attack. No. She looked at him, surprised by the force in that single word. Sung Jae turned to face her fully, and in the growing dawn light, she saw something in his expression that stole her breath. Vulnerability. Raw and unguarded. This isn't your life, he said. This was one night. One mistake in my security that will never happen again. I've already restructured everything. New protocols, new personnel, new safe houses. By the time the sun rises, you'll be more protected than government officials. That's not. Shaniqua shook her head. That's not what I mean. I mean, I came to Seoul to be invisible, to be safe, to build something quiet for me and my daughter. And now I'm in the middle of a mafia war because 2 babies needed you, Sung-jae interrupted, moving closer. Because they needed you. Because you showed up when everyone else failed. Because you have something I can't buy or command. His voice dropped. The ability to make people feel safe. Shaniqua felt tears burning behind her eyes. I didn't feel very safe tonight. I know. The words came out broken. And that's on me. I got complacent. I thought my reputation would be enough to keep threats away. I was wrong. And you almost paid for my arrogance. But we didn't. We're okay. Because you were brave. Sung-jae's hand reached out, then hesitated, hovering between them. You could have frozen, could have panicked. But you grabbed my sons and ran to the one place they'd be safe. You held them quiet when the enemy was outside. You protected them. They're babies. Of course You loved them, Sung-jae said simply. Even knowing the danger. Even knowing what staying in my world means. You chose them. Shaniqua looked down at the sleeping twins, their faces peaceful despite the night's chaos, and felt something crack in her chest. They're good boys, she whispered. They deserve someone who... They see you as their mother. The statement landed like a physical blow. Shaniqua's eyes snapped to his, wide and shocked. Sung-jae, I'm not. You are. His voice was firm, absolute. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that matters. You're the first face they seek when they wake, the only voice that calms them, the heartbeat they sleep against. You're their mother in every way except name. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Sung-jae moved closer, and Shaniqua's back hit the rooftop railing. She was trapped not by force, but by the intensity in his eyes. And I know something else too. What? I can't breathe when you're in danger. The confession came out rough, like it was being torn from somewhere deep. Tonight, when I heard them outside the nursery, when I realized they were hunting you. His jaw tightened. I've been shot twice, stabbed, beaten within an inch of my life. None of it compared to the terror I felt knowing they were between me and you. Sung-jae, you're the first peace I've ever known, Shaniqua. His hand finally completed its journey, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. The first person who looks at me and sees something other than a monster, who touches me without fear, who talks to me like I'm just a man trying to figure out how to be a father. Tears spilled down Shaniqua's cheeks. You're my employer. This is just gratitude, or proximity, or it's love. The word hung between them, terrifying and undeniable. No, Shaniqua whispered, even as her heart screamed yes. Yes. Sung-jae's thumb caught her tears, his touch impossibly tender for hands that had killed hours ago. I love the way you hum to my sons, the way you challenge me, the way you fixed my tie last week like it was the most natural thing in the world, the way you scolded me for missing meals, the way you fell asleep on my shoulder and fit like you'd always belonged there. I'm scared. The admission broke from her throat. I'm terrified. Of you. Of this. Of what it means. I know. I don't know how to be in this world. I'll teach you. I don't know if I can survive it. I'll make sure you do. His forehead pressed against hers, his breath warm against her lips. I'll burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you again. That's not healthy, Sung-jae. That's not... I know. A rough laugh escaped him. I know it's obsessive. Possessive. Probably toxic by normal standards. But nothing about my life is normal, and nothing about what I feel for you is rational. His eyes opened, holding hers with burning intensity. But it's real. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. Shaniqua's hands came up to his chest, not pushing away but not pulling close either, suspended in the space between surrender and self-preservation. The boys need you, Sung-jae whispered, his voice breaking slightly. And God help me, Shaniqua. So do I. The confession hung in the pre-dawn air, vulnerable and absolute. Shaniqua looked at this man, this dangerous, damaged, desperately sincere man, and felt every wall she'd built crumbling. She should say no, should protect herself, should run before she fell too deep into something that could destroy her. But the twins were sleeping 3 feet away, and Sung-jae's hands were cradling her face like she was something precious. And somewhere between Jamaica and Korea, between maid and mother, between fear and faith, she'd already made her choice. She didn't say yes, couldn't force the word past her lips. But when Sung-jae leaned closer, his intention clear in every line of his body, she didn't pull away. She stayed. She tilted her face up. She let him close the distance. And when his lips finally met hers, soft, reverent, trembling with restraint, she kissed him back. The city woke below them as dawn broke over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. And on a rooftop 30 floors above the violence, a Mafia king and a Jamaican immigrant sealed something neither fully understood but both desperately needed. A promise without words, a future without guarantees, and a love that would either save them both or destroy everything they'd built. When they finally pulled apart, Shaniqua was crying, and Sungjae was smiling a real smile, small and vulnerable and completely unguarded. "Stay," he whispered against her lips. "Not as the nanny, not as an employee. Stay as—" "I know what you're asking." Shaniqua's fingers curled into his shirt. "And I'm terrified. But I'm staying." His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and they stood there as the sun rose, two broken people holding each other above a city that wanted to tear them apart. Neither knew the war had only just begun. But for this moment, in the golden dawn light, with two babies sleeping peacefully beside them, they had something worth fighting for: each other. Seoul Underground, Ena, the council chamber. 3 days later, the room was designed to intimidate. 40 feet below a legitimate office building in Gangnam, carved from concrete and reinforced steel, the council chamber had witnessed the rise and fall of criminal empires. Blood had been spilled on these floors. Treaties signed at this table. Death sentences delivered from these chairs. Tonight, 15 men sat in judgment of the Black Wolf. Leaders of Seoul's major syndicates, underbosses, territory controllers, men who'd built fortunes on violence and respected only strength. They'd gathered in emergency session, and the air was thick with anger barely held in check. Tae-young stood at the head of the table, his expression carefully neutral as he faced the council without his boss. "He's 30 minutes late," the Busan representative snarled. "We summoned the Black Wolf, and he makes us wait like we're children?" "He's dealing with security concerns after the Incheon attack," Tae-young replied evenly. "Security concerns." The Daegu boss Hae-won's uncle, the abandoned wife's family, laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling his obsession with a foreign whore?" The room erupted. "She's a maid. An illegal immigrant. He's restructured his entire operation around protecting her. The Incheon attack happened because everyone knows she's his weakness." "Enough!" The eldest council member, Chairman Go, slammed his hand on the table. At 73, he'd survived 6 territory wars and commanded respect through pure longevity. "We're not here to gossip like housewives. We're here to address a legitimate concern. The Black Wolf has become compromised." "Compromised?" Tae-young's voice went cold. "He eliminated 8 Incheon operatives in 17 minutes. Alone. Where's the compromise?" "In his priorities," Chairman Go said quietly. 3 major deals delayed. 4 territory disputes unresolved. Council meetings missed. And all of it, every distraction, every weakness traces back to this Jamaican woman and those babies. "His sons," Tae-yang corrected. "Bastards born to a wife who abandoned them." The Daegu boss spat. "They bring nothing but shame to his name. And now he parades around with a foreigner playing mother. It's embarrassing. It makes us all look weak." "Then perhaps you should say that to his face." The voice came from the doorway. Every head turned. Sungjae stood at the entrance, and even men who'd known him for years felt a chill run down their spines. He was dressed in a black 3-piece suit, perfectly tailored, his hair swept back, his face a mask of cold calculation. But his eyes burned with something dangerous. Something that looked like a man who'd already decided how many bodies he was willing to stack. He walked to the head of the table with measured steps, each one echoing in the silence. No one spoke. No one moved. The Black Wolf had arrived, and suddenly everyone remembered why they feared him. Sungjae didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table, his hands resting casually on the chair back, and let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. "Gentlemen," he finally said, his voice soft and lethal. "I understand you have concerns about my priorities." "Hyungnim," Tae-young began, but Sungjae raised a hand. "No. Let them speak. I want to hear every concern, every complaint, every judgment." His eyes swept the room. "Who'd like to start?" More silence. Then Chairman Go cleared his throat. "Sungjae, you know we respect you. You've brought prosperity to this organization. Stability. But the attack 3 days ago was handled. After they breached your home. After they got within feet of your children." The old man's voice was gentle but firm. "You're distracted. And distraction in our world is fatal." "I'm not distracted. I'm focused. On a woman," the Busan representative said flatly. "On babies that aren't even—" "Finish that sentence." Sungjae's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, finish it." The man's mouth snapped shut. Sungjae leaned forward, his hands gripping the chair. The Incheon syndicate attacked my home because they thought they could exploit a weakness. They were wrong. They're dead. Their leadership is being systematically eliminated as we speak. By morning, Incheon territory will be absorbed into our operations, and their assets will be liquidated. So tell me, where's the weakness? In your attachment, the Daegu boss said boldly. To that woman. To those babies. You've made them into leverage anyone can use against you. No. Sungjae straightened. I've made them into a declaration. I've shown this organization and every rival watching that I protect what's mine. Absolutely. Completely. Without mercy. But at what cost? Chairman Go asked. You've missed critical meetings. Delayed important decisions. Your men whisper that you've gone soft. My men whisper many things. Would you like to know what I whisper? Sungjae's smile was razor sharp. I whisper names. To my executioners. Of anyone who questions my authority. The temperature in the room dropped. This isn't about authority, Chairman Go pressed. It's about judgment. That woman is a liability. Those children are a distraction. We're asking respectfully that you remove them from your immediate life. Find a safe house. Hire new caregivers. Create distance before. No. The word cut like a blade. No? The Daegu boss repeated, incredulous. You're defying the council's recommendation? I'm telling you that Shaniqua Forbes and my sons are non-negotiable. Sungjae's voice was flat, final. They are under my protection. They are part of my household. And they are... He paused, his eyes sweeping each face. They are my family. The room exploded. Family? She's a maid. This is insanity. You'd choose a foreign woman over the organization? Yes. Sungjae's roar silenced them all. He stood at the head of the table. No longer the controlled businessman, but the predator they'd always known lurked beneath. Let me make this extraordinarily clear, he said, his voice deadly calm. Anyone who touches Shaniqua Forbes touches my children. And anyone who touches my children, his eyes promised violence, is dead before their next breath. The silence was absolute. She's not a liability. She's a priority. My sons are not a distraction. They're my legacy. And if any of you have a problem with that... He pulled his gun, setting it on the table with deliberate care. Say so now. We'll settle it immediately. No one moved. No one spoke. Chairman Go stared at Sungjae with something like sadness. You're choosing them over the Empire. I'm choosing to be something more than just the Black Wolf, Sungjae said quietly. I've spent 15 years building power, territory, wealth. And for what? To die alone in a penthouse, surrounded by people who fear me but don't know me? He shook his head. My sons deserve better. Shaniqua deserves better. And maybe... His voice dropped. Maybe I deserve better than this room. So that's it? The Busan representative demanded. You're going soft? Becoming a family man? No. Sungjae's smile was terrifying. I'm becoming more dangerous. Because now I have something I'd burn this entire city to protect. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me unstoppable. He picked up his gun, holstering it with casual grace. Anyone who wants to test that theory is welcome to try. Anyone who wants to challenge my authority can step forward. And anyone who can't accept my decision. He gestured to the door. There's the exit. Leave now, and we part as allies. Stay, and you kneel to the new reality. The moment stretched, taut, and dangerous. Then Taeyang moved. He dropped to one knee, his fist pressed to his chest in the traditional gesture of absolute loyalty. I stand with the Black Wolf, he said clearly. And his family. One by one, others followed. Min Woo, the weapons specialist, 3 territory controllers, the finance overseer, but not everyone. The Daegu boss stood, his face twisted with fury. This is a mistake. A fatal one. Then it's mine to make, Sungjae said coldly. The man stormed out, taking 2 of his lieutenants with him. The Busan representative hesitated, then left as well. 5 others followed. When the exodus finished, only 9 of the original 15 remained. Sungjae looked at his depleted council and felt no regret. To those who stayed, your loyalty will be rewarded. To those who left, his expression went cold. You have 72 hours to vacate Seoul territory. After that, you're hostile forces. You're starting a civil war, Chairman Go said quietly. No, I'm ending uncertainty. Sungjae met the old man's eyes. Everyone now knows where I stand, what I value, what I'll kill to protect. That's not weakness. That's clarity. Chairman Go studied him for a long moment, then slowly, painfully lowered himself to one knee. Then I stand with clarity, the old man said. And with the Black Wolf's family, the remaining council members knelt. Sungjae looked at them, his loyal men, his reduced empire, his chosen family, and felt something shift in his chest. He'd lost allies tonight, created enemies, fractured his organization. But he'd also drawn a line that could never be uncrossed. And on the other side of that line stood Shaniqua and his sons, waiting for him to come home. Meeting adjourned, Sungjae said. Get back to work. We have a war to prepare for. As the men filed out, Taeyang lingered. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever done, he said quietly. Maybe both. Sungjae checked his phone, a text from Shaniqua. Twins are asleep. Are you okay? He smiled despite everything. But it was honest. And I'm tired of being anything else. He left the chamber, leaving behind the blood-stained legacy of the Black Wolf, and walked toward something he'd never dared reach for before, a family worth fighting for. 6 weeks later, the penthouse had changed. Where once there had been cold marble and sterile elegance, now there were soft blankets draped over furniture, baby toys scattered across the floor, and photographs, actual photographs displayed on shelves that used to hold only expensive liquor. Changmin attempting his first smile, Minsu sleeping with his fist curled around Shaniqua's finger, Sungjae holding both twins, looking terrified and proud in equal measure. A family, documented in moments neither had expected to have. The twins were thriving. At 3 months old, they'd transformed from the screaming, inconsolable infants into healthy, curious babies who babbled and cooed and tracked movement with bright, intelligent eyes. Changmin was the calmer one, content to observe the world with quiet intensity. Minsu was already showing personality, demanding, vocal, reaching for everything with determined hands. They were beautiful, perfect, loved, and they knew it. Da da da, Minsu babbled from his playmat, his attention fixed on Sungjae, who was working at the dining table with papers spread around him. Sungjae's head snapped up, his eyes wide. Did he just— He's been doing that all morning, Shaniqua said from the kitchen, smiling as she prepared bottles. It's not quite Dada yet, but he's getting there. Sungjae abandoned his work immediately, moving to the floor beside his son. Say it again. Come on, Minsu. Dada. Dada babaga. Close enough. The expression on Sungjae's face, pure, unfiltered joy, made Shaniqua's chest ache in the best way. This was the man Soul feared. The Black Wolf. The killer. The crime lord who'd eliminated 12 rivals in the past 6 weeks, systematically dismantling everyone who'd walked out of that council meeting. But right now, he was just a father, lying on his stomach on a playmat, making ridiculous faces to earn his son's laughter. You're going to spoil them, Shaniqua teased. Good. They deserve to be spoiled. Sungjae rolled onto his back, lifting Minsu above him. The baby squealed with delight. After everything they've survived, they deserve everything. Shaniqua joined them on the floor, settling Changmin in her lap. He immediately curled into her, content just to be held. How did the restructuring meeting go? She asked. Sungjae's expression shifted, business mode sliding into place. Busan territory is secured. Daegu resistance is minimal. The council is lean but loyal. We've lost about 30% of our previous strength, but what remains is solid. Do you regret it? He looked at her, then at his sons, and his answer was immediate. No, not for a second. 6 weeks ago, he'd fractured his empire for them. Since then, he'd been ruthlessly efficient, eliminating threats, consolidating power, making it clear that his family was untouchable. Some called him obsessed. Others said he'd lost his mind. Sungjae didn't care. He'd found something worth protecting, and he'd burn the world down before letting anyone take it from him. That evening, university campus, Shaniqua walked out of her final certification exam with her head held high and her heart racing. She'd done it. Despite everything, the chaos, the attacks, the impossible circumstances, she'd finished her nursing program. 3 years of interrupted education, completed in Seoul with Sungjae funding every class, every textbook, every hour she needed to study. Her phone buzzed. How did it go? S.J. She smiled, typing back. I passed. I'm officially a certified nurse. The response was immediate. I never doubted you. Celebration dinner tonight. Bring your appetite. Shaniqua looked at her phone. At this text conversation with a Mafia boss who signed his messages with initials and sent her good morning texts with baby pictures, and felt her heart swell. How had this become her life? More importantly, how had she become okay with it? The answer was simple, even if it terrified her. Because somewhere between the panic room and the rooftop confession, between caring for his sons and falling asleep on his shoulder, she'd fallen in love with Sungjae Lee. Completely. Irrevocably. Dangerously. and he'd fallen right back. 2 weeks later, the rooftop garden. The safe house had become home. Sung-jae had transformed the rooftop into a sanctuary, a garden with soft grass, flowering plants, and a pergola strung with lights. It was private, secure, and theirs. Tonight, the Seoul sky was clear, stars visible despite the city's glow. Shaniqua sat in the rocking chair they'd moved up here, both twins in her arms, freshly fed and drowsy. She hummed her grandmother's lullaby, the one about rivers and homecoming, and watched them drift toward sleep. Changmin's tiny hand rested against her chest. Minsu's breathing had already evened out. She felt, rather than heard, Sung-jae approach, his footsteps familiar now, comforting. He slid behind her, his arm wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. Together they looked down at the sleeping babies, this impossible family they'd built from trauma and necessity, and something neither had expected. Love. "They're getting so big," Sung-jae murmured against her ear. Changmin's already outgrowing his onesies. Minsu tried to grab my coffee this morning. Actual coordination. Shaniqua laughed softly. "Your son is going to be trouble." "Our son," Sung-jae corrected quietly. The words hung between them, a statement, a question, a hope. Shaniqua's breath caught. "Sung-jae, I know we haven't talked about it, about what this is, what we are." His arm tightened around her waist. "But I need you to understand something, Shaniqua. This isn't temporary for me. This isn't convenience or gratitude or proximity. This is—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "This is everything I didn't know I needed. We've only known each other 3 months. I've known you long enough to know I can't breathe without you. Long enough to know that every decision I make factors in your safety, your happiness, your future. Long enough to know that when I imagine 5 years from now, 10 years, 20, you're there. You're always there." Shaniqua closed her eyes, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "You're asking me to stay?" "No." He turned her face gently toward him, his thumb catching her tears. "I'm asking you to choose us, not because you have to, not because the boys need you, though they do, desperately, but because," his voice broke slightly, "because we love you, all 3 of us, and maybe, possibly, you love us back." "I do," Shaniqua whispered, the confession tearing free from somewhere deep. "God help me, I do. I love these babies like they came from my own body. And I love you even though you're dangerous and obsessive and you've killed people and you've turned my entire life upside down. I love you." Sung-jae's eyes closed, relief breaking across his face like dawn. "Then stay, not as the nanny, not as the woman who saved my sons. Stay as what? As their mother." His forehead pressed against hers. "As my partner, as the person I build my life around, as my family." The babies stirred between them, making small contented sounds. And Shaniqua felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like home, like purpose, like belonging. "I already chose you," she whispered against his lips. "All 3 of you. The moment I stepped into that nursery and heard them crying, I chose you. I just didn't know it yet." Sung-jae kissed her then, soft and reverent and trembling with emotion, while the twins slept peacefully between them, and Seoul glittered below like a field of fallen stars. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers, his arms wrapped around all 3 of them. "My family," he murmured, the words carrying weight and wonder. "My impossible, beautiful, terrifying family." Shaniqua laughed through her tears. "What would the Black Wolf's enemies say if they could see you now? They'd say I've gone soft." His smile was dangerous and tender all at once. "They'd be wrong. I'm more dangerous now than I've ever been. Because now I have everything to lose. And everything to fight for." "And everything to fight for," he agreed. They sat there as the night deepened, holding each other and the sleeping twins, and watched the city that had tried to tear them apart sparkle with indifferent beauty below. Somewhere in the shadows, enemies still plotted, rival syndicates still watched. The world was still dangerous, still uncertain, still full of threats they couldn't see coming. But on this rooftop, in this moment, they had something no amount of power or money could buy. They had each other. They had love. They had home. Epilogue, 6 months later. Minsu took his first steps on a Tuesday, stumbling from Shaniqua's arms into Sung-jae's with a triumphant shriek. Changmin, not to be outdone, followed 3 days later, moving with the quiet determination that marked all his achievements. Shaniqua's daughter, Amara, arrived from Jamaica on a Saturday, nervous and wide-eyed, and immediately adopted by the twins as their favorite person. The wedding happened on the rooftop at sunset, with only 5 guests. Taeyong, Minwoo, Chairman Go, and 2 babies who babbled through the entire ceremony. Shaniqua wore white. Sungjae cried. The twins threw flowers instead of sitting still. It was perfect. And so the Black Wolf Soul's most feared criminal, the man who'd built an empire on violence and terror, found the one thing that could tame him. Not fear. Not power. Not wealth or control or respect earned through brutality. But love. Love wrapped in Jamaican warmth. Love that hummed ancient lullabies. Love that held his sons to her heart and called them home. Love that saw the monster and chose the man. And in choosing him, made him believe he could be both. And maybe, just maybe, something better. Power doesn't raise babies. People do. Shanika Forbes Lee. That's it, family. The Black Wolf got his family, and I'm trying to build mine right here with you. So here's the deal. If we can get this video to 1,000 likes, I'll drop a bonus chapter showing what happens 6 months later. Can we do it? Like, subscribe, comment, and then click that next video on your screen because the story you're about to watch? Even more heart-stopping than this one. Let's go.